Hustle with Pat, Alex, and Cody.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to episode number 2 of the Hustle Sports Debate Podcast with Cody, Alex, and Pat. Sans Alex today, so it's just myself and Pat. Pat, ready to get into some debates today?
Oh, absolutely. I came ready.
So this is a great time to have a sports podcast. You have the NHL playoffs, the NBA playoffs. Baseball's getting full swing. Football's just around the corner, both college and the NFL. We're going to start in the realm of basketball. In the last 2 days, it has been an Armageddon of news. There's been not a single good piece of news in the last 36 to 48 hours. You have injuries to star players. You have coaches leaving. You have the Dallas Mavericks organization imploding from the inside. Zion Williamson has just told everyone that he hates New Orleans already. He's only played 80 games. It's tough, but I think arguably the biggest story in terms of losses are the loss of 2 Western Conference players and probably the 2 best Western Conference players left in the playoffs in Kawhi Leonard and Chris Paul. Chris Paul was thrown on the COVID list. There are multiple reports saying that he might only be out for a game, might not even miss any time if this Clippers-Utah series goes. But he could miss, no one really knows. He said that he has tested positive for COVID-19, according to some sources. So we have no really clue how long he'll be out. And then Kawhi Leonard has an ACL injury. And most of the time that means something's not great. And of all the ACL injuries in the past, however many years, it's normally a tear or something that requires surgery. So Pat, I'll open up the floor with you. What's the more devastating loss to their team? Is it CP3 going down or Kawhi going down?
I have to go with Kawhi because then I think at least with the Suns, there's good pieces still left on the table. There's good depth. Like Booker's shown he can perform. Ayton is become a monster kind of out of nowhere. I mean, he's dominating. I mean, he played great against Jokic, who just won MVP. Jay Crowder is a good piece. Bridges is a good piece. I really like Dario Saric too. So I think they have a better foundation around them that they can kind of lose Chris Paul and still be decent and more competitive. Kawhi, he's everything for that team. He's the board man. He rebounds, he assists, he scores. He is Mr. Fourth Quarter for them. And so now their top option is playoff P, who hasn't exactly been lighting the world on fire historically in the playoffs. His last few games might have been good-ish. I'm not totally sure on that one, but you got to rely on Paul George now. And I said that team doesn't have as much depth as it used to, and so I don't really know. I have to go with this. I think the Kawhi injury is devastating because also, I want to speak on Kawhi's future a little bit. He's a free agent at the end of this year, and he could, if it's a ACL tear, he could be out all the next season, and he's on the back end of 30, going into a contract year. Not a good place to be Kawhi Leonard right now.
Yeah, it's definitely tough, and I think I'm going to take Kawhi Leonard just for the fact that you lose a top 3 player in the NBA on a team that it seemed to be cursed at this point, never made a conference finals ever in their team history, and they've been so close so many times. I think what's really pushing me with Kawhi is that Chris Paul might not even miss any time. If we were saying that both Chris Paul and Kawhi were out, I'd actually think that the Chris Paul being out hurts more. Because just like we talked yesterday or in the last podcast, which if you haven't listened to, go to Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts and find.
We are now on Google Podcasts as well.
So Pat, look at you go. So anyway, if you missed episode 1, we talked about the coach of the year. And while you two, Alex included, were a big Monty Williams fan, I thought that team was a Chris Paul baby, and Chris Paul is the reason that they're in their place, and that team goes as far as Chris Paul takes them. With him being out, and for it seems to be just a game, I'm going to go Kawhi. But if both of those players were out for the rest of the playoffs, I have, if Clippers move on, which they beat Utah without Kawhi, had one of their best offensive games of the season, and Paul George had the only I think 35, 15, and 5 game in Clippers playoff history. He was insane. Playoff P jokes. I think there was a stat he shot really well from the field. He shot over 50% on like 20 something attempts. And then only one of his shots was an open shot in terms of like, I think open shot is considered like the closest defenders like 5 feet away from you. So everything was a contested shot. And he was fantastic and he was awesome. And that really helps my I love PG heart. All the 13-year-olds on Twitter really got bent over by Paul George, as they should. Those 13-year-olds on Twitter, boo them. But anyway, I'm going with Kawhi just because he's basically a guarantee to not make the rest of the playoffs, and that team is not a championship team without Kawhi. They're still a good team, as proven. I think Paul George is still a top 15 to 20 player in the NBA. I think he's still really. And Reggie Jackson, just for some reason, is good at basketball now.
Yeah, they definitely have a good roster. They have a decent roster, but I think the Suns might have a better roster around them, and they can they're built more to handle the loss of Chris Paul. And also, I know everyone's listened to the audio version of this. My jaw just dropped when Cody said that Chris Paul did more than Monty Williams, because we're gonna give a little sneak peek here. On Monday, we will be recording our next episode talking about Chris Paul. And I think he is very overrated, and it's going to be probably one of our best debates. So make sure you subscribe and listen to Monday's podcast. Next Tuesday's podcast. We will be recording on Monday. So keep an eye out for that one. But the Clippers have a good roster around them, but I think it's kind of like the LeBron and Lakers thing, where it's like you have good pieces when you have that main focal point around. But if you just take away the star, that team's not going to be that good. So you have, at best, good role players. You don't really have anyone great. I understand, except for Paul George. I'll give you Paul George. I really like Serge Ibaka. Reggie Jackson's starting to be good again. Kennard can shoot. Pat Bev is a great defender. But on the offensive side of the floor, I don't know if they have enough to get, especially when you're at this point of the playoffs.
Right. My issue is the Suns are just last year's Suns without Chris Paul. Like we talked about, like they added Jay Crowder and that's nice, but really nothing really has changed. I mean, DeAndre Ayton has kind of changed his game a little bit, but now with Chris Paul, he has to be DeAndre Ayton of last year, which is still a good player. But I don't think he's as effective as number 2 option as he is as number 3 option. As number 3 option, he is a solid 15 to 18 to 20 points a game on really good efficiency right by the rim. And he's able to focus more on the defensive end, which is really the surprise with him coming into college. Everyone's like, well, he's going to score. Can he defend? And this past year, what he did on Jokic was fantastic. He played great defense on the MVP and one of the most unstoppable players in the NBA. He made him look human. And now if you have to revert Ayton back to last year, which again is still a good player, but might not have that defensive focus, and you're going against maybe a Utah if the Clippers lose, or you're going against a Clippers team that's now hot and they've proven that they've beaten the number 1 seed twice in a row, including once on their home floor, without your star player. That's a dangerous dog to go against. So that's just my concern with Phoenix. I think both stars obviously take a lot out of their team not being there, and I think they're definitely nowhere near the potential they can be without Chris Paul or Kawhi Leonard, respectively. But if I were to bank on if like they both met up in the finals, which could very much happen, especially with the Clippers being 1 game away from meeting the Suns there. If both of those 2 players miss the entire series, I might have to take the shorthanded Clippers. But I know Chris Paul isn't going to miss, so I'm going to go with Kawhi with you.
I don't know. I think, is this DeAndre Ayton's 3rd year or 2nd?
This is his 3rd.
3rd.
Yeah.
I think 3rd is kind of like the telling point of like if you're going to be how good of an NBA player you're going to be. And I think that he took that massive step in his 3rd year. I think I understand the Suns were not great last year, but they have a good chunk of they're a good mix of veteran and young players. So I think having them just another year forward, they're going to progress anyways. They're going to naturally get better. And I think Ayton just took a giant jump forward to kind of help this team a lot. So I'm not going to give Chris Paul that credit. I cannot do it. The best thing Chris Paul has done is with State Farm commercials. I will not do it. I cannot do it. So I think Kawhi's injury is just bigger. I agree with you, Cody. The length of it is really scary. But I mean, look at the future of the Clippers. The Clippers could fall apart this offseason so quickly. If Kawhi leaves, if Paul George leaves, they have nothing left. And then they're just gonna be trading off any veteran pieces they have left,
Oh,
and they'll be entering a full rebuild at that point.
Oh yeah, they definitely put all their eggs in the basket of the last 2-3 years. 100%. And they've been somewhat rewarded for it, other than a monumental collapse last year and an injury to your star player. I thought they were going to go to the finals this year, and I thought they were going to beat, if Kawhi and Chris Paul are on the floor together the whole series. I think that's the Clipper series, and I think they could really match up with the net. I think they're good too. I bought into the Clippers site, but I think Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are awful. I almost said awful. Awesome with each other. I think Ty Lue has just shown that if you have a head coach in the league not named Doc Rivers, then I think you're pretty much set with star players. And speaking of Doc Rivers, let's get into our next subject, and that is who had the worst collapse in their respective game fives. Was it Milwaukee blowing their 17-point lead against the Nets with a struggling Harden, no Kyrie, and letting Kevin Durant have possibly one of the top 5 or 10 scoring playoff moments of all time? Or is it the Sixers who blew a almost 30-point lead in the fourth quarter thanks to Ben Simmons shooting 32% from the free throw line? And I'll take this one, Pat. It's the Philadelphia 76ers, and it is so tough to defend them. And we're both Celtics fans, and I get that we have that natural hate for the Sixers.
Trust the process.
I like to think of myself as a very rational sports fan, regardless of my fandom of a certain team, unless it's the New York Yankees. I give their teams their due. I think Ben Simmons is a very good player. I think he gets an over amount of hate. I think he's a lot better than people give him credit for, because they like to hang on to can't shoot jokes or 1 point in the playoff jokes. But last night, I think, Pat, was the most embarrassing performance from a star I've seen since LeBron James in 2011. Yep. And I'm sticking to that. I think he is too good of a player and too special of a talent to have, if anything, regressed since his rookie year. He's an awesome defender, a fantastic defender, probably one of the, there's a reason that he was in the running for the defensive player of the year. He is that good, but offensively, he is such a liability. There's one thing in this rookie year, everyone says he can't shoot. I'm like, well, he's shooting 80% at the rim, 75. That's ridiculous, regardless of who you are. Even if you're Giannis, that's pretty ridiculous. And I'm like, if he can get to the rack every time he wants, he can score 4 out of every 5 times he goes there. He doesn't really need to shoot. Stop him going to the basket. And they have. And he's not going to the basket as much. He's ineffective in all areas as a half-court player. He's really good in it's the Lonzo Ball effect, but at least Lonzo can shoot a 3. Where he's really a minus in the half court, and that's where the playoffs are played, in the half court. There is not as much running and gunning as there are in the regular season. You can't exploit teams in the half court nearly as much as you in the full court, nearly as much as you do in the playoffs. It slows down. That's why those Grizzlies teams from back in the day, everyone's like, they're boring to watch. They only shoot like 12 times a game. Well, they were built for the playoffs, and they took that number 1 Spurs team. Same thing with the Jazz in the last few years. It's like they're a really slow-paced team. Like, I'm not going to put them on my league pass. Like, you don't have to, but you'll see them on TNT in June. You'll see them at TNT in May. You'll watch them on ESPN in May. So they'll be there, and they'll be playing well. And this team, without Joel Embiid, is a complete disaster. Doc Rivers. And we have all today's the anniversary of this recording of the championship in 08. And it really upsets me, but Doc's a fraud.
Oh, yeah.
Doc blown of the 5 total 3-1 collapses in playoff history. He's coached 3 of them.
Awful.
It's so upsetting, because I love Doc and I love what he did for us and everything like that. But it's just, he got out coached.
Yep.
They were fouling Ben Simmons and like 8 minutes left, down by 20, and they came back and won. That's inexcusable.
It has to be the set. I agree with you, Cody. It has to be Philly last night. That was an abomination and disgrace to basketball. Dr. J is rolling. Like, he must be.
He was at the game.
I know.
I were at the game.
That is awful. You had the 2 greatest players in the organization's history, in the building
God.
and you choke a lead that big in a pivotal game 5, in my opinion, other than like game 7s, obviously, I think game 5 is the most important game in an entire series.
Oh yeah.
In my opinion, that I think a lot of people would agree with that. I think some people would say you could argue game 4, but I would say game 5. Anyways, 30 points? Horrible. And the worst part, like 76 fans were so cocky online.
Oh yeah.
Like during the game, they were horrible.
The team page was like, "Is this what fatigue looks like?" They were up by like 30 at halftime. I think it was like 21 going in the fourth quarter, but they're up by 27 at one point.
It was awful. And I mean, good for the Hawks to come back. That team, they're proving themselves more and more and more. I have really doubted the Hawks coming into this playoff. They are showing themselves. They're coming out to play. They're serious contenders now. And I don't know. The 76ers, I don't know what it is. They just can never get over the hump. I do think Doc Rivers is a little bit of a fraud. I mean, he got over the hump one time when he had Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Ray Allen, when he had really one of the first big like super team things. Like the Celtics were one of the first teams who really did it in the modern era for this point.
Oh yeah.
And so they really carried him to it. And like then he went and inherited a great Clippers team afterwards. They got nowhere. Also had Chris Paul on it, but that's for Monday. And like he just can't get them far. I think Doc is a perfect guy. Like he'll get you into the playoffs. He'll make you help you get on a deep run, but he's not going to get you to the promised land. He just can't do it. I mean, but like it'd be one thing if like they had that 30-point lead in like the first or second quarter. It was in one quarter or whatever, however much one quarter. How are you so off? Even if the Hawks come out on fire offensively, how can you not at least somewhat match it to just keep it going? Like how? I don't get it. I don't get it. And like absolute props to Trae Young for doing this. The kid is on a roll.
Yeah. And
I agree with you about Ben Simmons. He's been bad. He like people have really figured out years ago. Like you can put a big man on him and just stand him at the free throw line, and he does nothing. His defense is fantastic. It absolutely is, and I think he's a jumper away from being a great player. But like I don't understand how he can't put one in his game. I will never understand it. This is his fourth year, fifth year. We've been saying this since he got drafted. So I don't understand how he refuses to adapt and change his game. That said, I think the Ben Simmons hate is a little strong.
It is. I mean, I think overall, I think it's a little strong. But after that, Pat, like I've always had him around my top 20 in the NBA right now. I think he's that good of a player. But after that, like, who would you rather have on a team? Like, how good he is, but when it comes to the playoffs, like we gave Paul George all this slander. We talk this and talk that. Well, let's talk about it with Ben Simmons too. Let's be consistent here. And we're seeing what's happening to Giannis. And at least Giannis has a little bit of a 3-point shot. He shoots 30% from there. And if he can get it up to 33%, I think he'll be fine. And we'll talk about the Milwaukee before we go on, because we'll talk about their collapse and what happened there too.
I think the thing with the Bucks though is at least like they know if that's what Giannis has to do, so they kind of like actually game plan around it. With Embiid there, you can't really game plan around it. Like I've been on this wagon for a while. You gotta pick Embiid or Simmons, and you gotta move on from one of them. You can't keep both. Like, if you look at Giannis's, like yes, they have the true big man in Brook Lopez. Brook Lopez, for the most part, actually stands at the 3-point line nowadays. Like he's not really
that's Splash Mountain you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't really stand inside and get like the hard rebounds and everything like his size would indicate he does. And I will say, Ben Simmons deserves a little bit of hate, but I know you're talking about who would you rather have a little bit. My roommate, my buddy Jeff, texted me, he goes, I think I would rather have Kemba Walker than Ben Simmons. And I thought that was an asinine statement, as bad as Ben Simmons has been. So shout out, shout out to Jeff for being an absolute idiot. Love you, kid, but horrible take on that one. So I think Ben Simmons, he deserves hate. He needs to step up and he needs to adapt his game. But I do think some people are taking a little harsh on him a little bit.
Well, let's look at this. So if we look at Joel Embiid's playoff numbers in the first round, He was 24 points, 7 rebounds, 2.5 assists. Mind you, this is on a torn meniscus. This series against the Hawks, he's at 32 points, 13 rebounds, and basically 5 assists. Like, he's playing absolutely on 48% from the field, 37% from three. Like, he's playing absolutely bonkers. And he is the reason they're in, where they're at.
Yep.
And if we look at Ben Simmons' numbers, as I try to find them playoff series. Against Washington, it was 14 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists on 64% shooting and 35% from the free throw line. Against Philadelphia, it's 11 points. Basically, we'll give him 12 points, 5 rebounds, 8 assists, and 30% from the free throw line.
Oh.
He's the only 2 players to score in the second half. The second half was Embiid and Seth Curry.
Oh.
Tobias Harris was a no-show, but I think I didn't watch that game 100%. I only watched that fourth quarter, like the last 5 minutes of that game. So I don't know if it was just a Doc thing or if it just he wasn't hitting shots, but it was atrocious. It was more atrocious than Milwaukee, and Milwaukee was pretty bad. I watched all of that game, and that was pretty bad. That's a game where just both Budenholzer and Doc Rivers can't make the necessary adjustments, and the playoffs are an adjustments-based thing. You play a team 6 to 7 times in most cases. You make adjustments game to game. That's how you win. And those 2 just can't do it, and they haven't done it for the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, what I don't understand is why PJ Tucker has been guarding Kevin Durant when you have the defensive player of the year of 2020, Giannis, standing in the corner. I don't get that.
Yeah.
You have a guy who is named the best defender in the league a year ago, and he's a similar size, they play the same position, and you don't have him guarding Kevin Durant. And especially when Kevin Durant is the only option for the Nets right now. I understand Harden came back, but he came back at like 30% health.
He only scored 4 points.
Yeah, he was more out there as a decoy than anything else. Like, you have Giannis standing in the corner going like Landry Shamet and whatever and whoever else instead of Kevin Durant, who is one of the best scorers ever. And it boggles me. I understand PJ Tucker is a tough dude. He's a good defender, but he doesn't have the size that Giannis does. Giannis is the only guy who can match Kevin Durant in like the length and the speed and all the other stuff.
Yeah, no, this is I get why you don't have him, just because Giannis is a very good off-ball free safety type guys. He plays defense the way that Jason Tatum plays defense, and there's a difference between being a very good on-ball and very good off-ball defender. And Giannis is one of the top 2, maybe even the best off-ball defenders in the league, where you put him on the center, let him sit around the paint, and he just roams. He can get steals, he can protect the paint. But where that goes wrong, and that would be fine against a Miami where Bam Adebayo isn't shooting that well, or against another team that doesn't have a really good center. Like if they played Utah, they wouldn't let Utah score at all.
Yeah, but I think that is better against like a team that's like more like balanced and more like spread out. Like the Nets are. We talked about last episode. The Nets are very top 3 heavy. When 2 of them are gone, like it's one guy.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
Send all 5 guys to Kevin Durant. Make Jeff Green beat you. Make Landry Shamet beat you. Make whoever else on that team beat you.
Yeah, and that's the issue where they're getting in. Whereas the guys who Giannis is guarding are at the 3-point line, so he can't sit in the paint like he normally would. And that's where the issue is. And that, right to your point, PJ Tucker is not a slouch defensively, but Kevin Durant's top 5 scorer ever.
Yeah.
And he's just gonna shoot over you, shoot around you, go by you. You have to put Giannis on him just for the fact that he'll stay with him. And you're not losing anything if you're putting PJ Tucker and someone in the corner. Like that's what they're like. They just refuse to make adjustments. Like, well, this worked all year. Well, there's no context to using that. Like you're an adult man who's been in the NBA for 30 more than I've been alive. So
we are sitting here telling him how to do his job.
Figure it out. And I know it's like there's a difference between comfortability and like just you have to go for it. And he said he wanted to guard Katie. We'll see what happens tonight as of recording. So maybe the series is over by the time this comes out and nothing changed and we're just talking to a brick wall like we seem like we have. But those are two of the and this back to back, two of the worst like just collapse. And Charles Barkley called the Bucks dumb. And it's like, you do dumb stuff all year, then this is
That says a lot.
Yeah.
That like when Charles Barkley is saying that you are dumb, you are really messing up bad.
Yeah. And then you also have that game that's just tough. We'll have to see what adjustments are made. So that's what we have for the NBA for today. Moving on, we have another controversial topic, which is very near and dear to my heart, and you might see a very passionate Cody rant coming up. The sticky stuff situation in the major leagues. Now, Major League has basically set out a memo talking about the use of foreign substances to enhance pitchers' spin rate of the ball, making it harder for hitters to hit, making pitchers look a lot better than they are, yada, yada. Basically saying if you're caught, you can't use anything other than rosin that they give you. Before there was a mixture of sunscreen and rosin, which is banned. Now you can't use pine tar, can't use the spider tack, which has been a buzzword over the last few weeks. Any sticky adhesive, which helps you grip the ball, move the ball, anything like that is outlawed. Basically, if you're caught with it, you'll be checked a couple times a game. If you're a starting pitcher by the crew chief or the home plate umpire, whichever one I didn't really get. If they deem you that you're a little too sticky, you're tossed out of the game, 10-game suspension. So you get checked a couple times as a starter, and then as a reliever, you'll get checked either right before you come in or right after you leave your first inning. So, and this is causing a lot of stuff. And before we hear from us, Pat grabbed Tyler Glasnow, some of the Tyler Glasnow interview, which he had after finding out that he tore his UCL and now needs Tommy John surgery. So we're going to play that for you right now.
Tyler, you were pretty frustrated about the ball last night. Just any more thought as to whether that may have kind of played a part in any of this, or has that kind of entered your mind yet?
Convenient and but I 100% believe that contributed to me getting hurt. No doubt, without a doubt. I think it's ridiculous. I have used sticky stuff before. It's ridiculous that it seems like this whole public perception of it's just select few of people. Your favorite pitcher probably 50 years ago was using something too. If you felt these balls, how inconsistent they were, you have to use something. So in the past, my substance of choice is sunscreen and rosin. Just nothing egregious, something to where I can get a grip on the ball so it doesn't feel dusty. But 2 starts ago against the Nationals, I went cold turkey, nothing. And before that start, I remember when all this stuff came out, I was talking to people and talking to doctors, and they were like, the thing that maybe MLB doesn't realize or that players don't realize is what is the injury, what is the prevention of maybe it'll add to injuries. And in my mind, I was like, that sounds dumb. That sounds like an excuse a player would use to make sure he can use sticky stuff. But I threw to the Nationals with nothing. I don't use sticky stuff I don't use spider tack. I don't need more spin. I have huge hands. I spin the ball fine. I want grip. I did well against the Nationals, probably one of the best starts I had all year. I woke up the next day and was like, I am sore in places that I didn't even know I had muscles in. I felt completely different. I switched my fastball grip and my curveball grip. Whether you want us to not use sticky stuff or not is fine. Fine. Do it in the off season. Give us a chance to adjust to it. But I just threw 80-something, 70 whatever innings, and then you just told me I can't use anything in the middle of the year. I had to change everything I've been doing the entire season. Everything out of the window. I have to start doing something completely new. And then I'm telling you, I truly believe that's why I got hurt.
So on Twitter, I reacted to this, and I said that he said everything right. He did everything right. And it's unfortunate how much MLB hates itself and is shooting itself in the foot constantly. Pat, what are your thoughts before I get into my bag of tricks?
It's a really complicated situation.
It is. It is way more complicated.
I don't think it's as simple as it's wrong or it's right, because I genuinely understand both sides of it. I understand the league is here's a baseball, use it. What else do you need? Everyone should be playing on this part. But I also get the pitchers part where it's if it's going to help them maintain their careers, then I think it's okay with it. So my take on it is I'm okay with them using something for grip. but I'm not okay with it for spin rate. That's where I'm kind of drawing my line. Tyler Glassman said, I use sunscreen and rosin strictly for grip. He's like, I have long fingers. I don't need spin rate. Like the ball spins off my hand as it is. But then you have other guys like Garrett Cole who got caught using it, and like his numbers have inflated after getting caught. So I really don't know. I think you need to be able to. I think MLB needs to give like a better alternative than just a rosin bag. But also, let's face it, no matter what MLB gives them, people are gonna cheat. It doesn't matter. Like, I understand there's this big crackdown now. Wait like 2 months until the story is like blown apart. I assure you this could be pitchers using Spider Tack again. And I think sorry, not to cut you off, Cody, but I think I want to talk about Trevor Bauer for a second too, because I think he's the forefront of these baseball rules are dumb. We need baseball to change. Baseball needs to adapt. And he posted videos, or even in his post-game interview, they're like, Trevor, what do you think about this sticky stuff situation? And he literally had a baseball stuck to his hand. He put his hand up flat, ball under, and the ball just hung there. And he goes, do you think this is legal? And that is what I kind of have a problem with. Because like Spider Tack and stuff like that is helping pitchers pitch faster, get better results. And I understand hitters have stuff to help grip their bats. I get it. It's not completely fair. But the pitchers do have a rosin bag. Like I can't imagine how they can't learn how to grip a baseball after they've been learning how to pitch and throw since they were like a toddler with the same baseballs that they're using nowadays. So it's like I really see both sides of it. So, but I don't know what the correct alternative or fix to the problem is, because I don't think there is a solution.
Yeah. Here's my issue. We're going to touch on. So this morning doing the research for the topics, I wanted to know, well, what's the difference between Spider Tack and another foreign substance? So Trevor Bauer has a YouTube channel, which
it's something.
Hopefully when we publish this out and have a tweet, I'll send a link to the video, because honestly, everything I'm going to say is piggybacking off what Trevor Bauer did, and he explained it perfectly. So definitely go check out his video. It's like 30 minutes long. He goes about all the bases, and see what I did there.
And personally, I'm a fan of Trevor Bauer. I think what he's doing for the game is fantastic. I know he's getting a lot of backlash. I think what he's doing for the game is fantastic. He's calling out MLB and forcing them to change, and he's being the face of it. He's taking a lot of heat, but MLB I think they're finally starting to adapt a little bit, and it's taken years to get to that point. So I just want to put that out there. I am a fan of Trevor Bauer, but I get his frustrations. I'm with him and against him on this.
Yeah. So here's what he said. So we'll start with the balls. So the balls is not in the dark. They're changing the balls all the time. They're juicing the balls, not juicing the balls. So the consistency of the balls is different. Like the balls are being different all the time. So you have to, it's not like this baseball. It's the difference between this baseball and this baseball. If we ever use video, you have this regular baseball and this clay baseball I made when I was like in 4th grade. A little different. They're both baseballs at the end of the day, but they're a little different. How you hold them is a little different. So he's basically saying that these balls are different, and we have to kind of relearn how to do them every offseason. He also said that when the balls are scuffed up by the MLB, they're basically Mississippi mud, which is just water and dirt, and it's a mixture, and they'll rub it on each ball and then whatever, but they'll store them away. And sometimes you don't use a ball for 2 or 3 weeks. So you know what happens when mud dries out?
It's really dry.
It becomes dust. So now imagine throwing this ball covered in just dust. You're not going to get a good grip on it. So that's why they use these adhesives to get a good grip on the ball, because the balls that are given to them aren't satisfactory. And Major League Baseball, it seems that they don't really care. Now, where he comes from, he agrees that we shouldn't be using sticky stuff to enhance the balls, but there is no formal definition of what constitutes a sticky stuff or not. And his big issue is the umpires having jurisdiction over what constitutes a sticky or not, because he's saying if I use the rosin and I get it so that it's sticky and nice, and if something, I do my regular check and they check my hand and they think it's a little too sticky and I get tossed out of the game, I'm using what you asked me to use.
Yep.
So now I'm punished for doing what you told me to do. So that's where he comes into the effect where you can't just tell players not to wear sunscreen when they're playing baseball for 3 hours in 90-degree weather with the sun beating down on them. So how rosin works, you get some sweat, some moisture, you mix it up, it gets a little tacky. That's how you grip the ball. But what happens if you wore sunscreen and it inadvertently just becomes sweaty sunscreen? And now you're using that. Now you can't the game because you don't want skin cancer. So this is really where his issue is. It was a knee-jerk reaction by Major League Baseball, and it's gonna cause injuries potentially. And Glasnow said in the interview, I don't know if that part was in the part that we'll be playing. I'll go in during after we're already done recording. But Glasnow said that he was talking to doctors and they said like this could cause injuries. And Glasnow was like, I don't really think it's that serious, but whatever. And then he tore his elbow ligament, the most important ligament for a pitcher to have. So now you have these guys who are gripping the ball harder because they can't get a good grip on it, and they're not allowed to use these substances, which Major League Baseball, according to Rebauer, basically said, this is a rule, but we're not enforcing it. So do whatever. And we won't change it. They told when the MLB Players Association and the league met, they said, we're not going, if anything is changed, we understand you guys are using this stuff, and we're going to do some tests, throughout the year, and the off season will make a decision. Well, this isn't the off season, Pat. This is the middle of the season. And now everything has to change. And that's the big issue here. It's not that, oh, you're upset that they're cracking down on cheaters. No, I'm upset that they told these guys we're going to change it next year, because pitching, when you go out and watch your kid pitch, it's a lot different than watching a Major League Baseball player pitch.
Yeah.
Like, I can go out there and throw this ball and do whatever. But if I'm a major leaguer, I'm prepared. Like, I have everything down to an exact science. I know exactly where the ball has to be, how it fits in my hand, and I'm practicing over and over and over and over again to get my mechanics, muscle memory as much as I can for hours a day during when I'm not even playing baseball. So now these guys have to change it all up, which is causing this elbow inflammation that Tyler Glasnow had, which ultimately resulted in a torn UCL. And that's the issue where baseball heard what baseball is so desperate to be popular again, as it should, because it kind of lost its luster because they let everything happen. And now they have dug themselves this hole and are trying to take the quick way out, and they're just digging the hole deeper, where they're trying to, people are being exposed for cheating, let's hurry up and change course real quick, when instead of talking to the players, doing out and letting the fans, who really frankly don't know what they're talking about, dictate what's going on. That's where the issue is. And also Carlos Rondon, he said that, I find it kind of hard to believe that you're going to punish me for having sunscreen on, but you're not going to punish the Houston Astros at all for knowingly cheating during a playoff run and winning a World Series. So that's where the issues are. And Bowers says it perfectly in terms of the umpires not knowing really. There's no course to show the umpires what sticky stuff they should be looking for. It's basically like, just go figure it out. So he said it's like if all traffic cops weren't given radar guns, and they were told to assess tickets via just like looking, like, oh, that car looks like it's going a little fast, it must be speed, without a radar gun. And then you take a whole new police force and put them in and then tell them to do the same thing. They have no reference. They don't know what fast is. They're basically guessing on what's what. And that's where things can be an issue. And Trevor Bauer said it perfectly. Tyler Glasnow said it perfectly. Like, this stuff has been going on forever. And even though it is a rule, we were told it won't be enforced. And MLB failed to really find the difference between the stuff that's making your shit spin 4 million miles more and making these guys have careers they weren't supposed to, and guys just getting a better grip on the baseball so you don't hit people in the head. And that's the big issue, and that's why I'm upset.
Yeah. I think some issues that we need to talk about is Trevor Bauer said it, like he tweeted out, the umpires are now the judge, jury, and executioner all in that one moment of when they suspect anything. And so, and let's be honest, there are some umpires and pitchers who just don't get along. Like they know each other personally for the most part, for like at least somewhat. Sometimes they just don't agree with each other. So any vendettas could really come to life here, which isn't good for the umpires or the baseball player themselves. My other thing, where is the players' union in all of this? Where are they?
They were told that nothing was changed. That's where they were.
How can they pass a rule like that so quickly without the players' union saying anything, coming out with anything, or like they did nothing? I haven't heard a word about the Players Association at all. And like, how are they letting this go? Like, you're hurt. The players are getting hurt already. We're on like day 3 of the substance abuse like restriction now, and you already have one of the league's best pitchers, Glass, now out for the year. You have Garrett Cole, one of the best pitchers right now, who just signed a massive deal. Literally on the verge, he looks like he's about to cry in his post-game interview. So I don't understand how you're just expecting entirely to go cold turkey on it. And the other thing is the disciplinary part of it for baseball. I know you talked about Carlos Rendon and like how the Astros thing was unfair. First off, the punishment if you get caught is 10 days with pay.
Yeah.
So you miss 2 starts and you still get paid for it. How is that a punishment? Yeah. I understand. Like you don't get to compete, you don't get to play a game. Most guys, they skip starts throughout the year anyway. So like, you're helping them go longer into the year for the most part for a good amount of teams. So what is that? And never mind, years ago, Yadier Molina had to block a ball in the dirt, and the ball stuck to his gear, to his catcher's chest. So clearly, this has been going on for a very long time, and they haven't done anything since then. And this, I don't know how old that event was. It's at least 2 or 3 years minimum that happened. I'm not totally sure, but like, how do you see a ball basically velcroed to a catcher's chest, and you go, you know what? That's weird. That shouldn't happen. Oh well, what else happened today? How do you turn a blind eye to that back then, and then you come into now and expect all pitchers to go cold turkey on it? And also, like, who's cracking down on it now? Like, if you've had 32 teams cheating like this for so long, what's going to change? And I go, you know what? No, you're not doing that anymore. Now who's going to crack down on it? Oh, the umpires have to look a little harder? Again, like they have enough to focus on. And I'm waiting for the day where umpires are going to get it wrong. Like they're going to kick someone out of the game and it's going to be like, I literally just used Rosenbach. And this entire shitstorm is just going to come back again. Or if they miss a call or something because they are looking at a player's glove, something's going to happen that bites the league in the ass again. And I'm waiting for them for it. But I don't understand. How do you neglect this problem for so long and then you go, how could the players do this stuff? Like, it's literally that Eric Andre meme where, like, he shoots the guy behind him and he's like, who could have done this? It's like MLB neglecting the players, neglecting this for so long. Why would the pitchers cheat and get a bigger contract and, like, have better careers? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I remember in my time watching baseball, and I've been watching baseball for at least 20 years. Only 2 instances I remember where pitchers were caught using something. And they were back, I think both in 2013, when Clay Buchholz had his last really good year for some reason.
Yep.
2013, he got hurt, which was kind of his thing, but he was 12-1 in 16 starts. So it was an all-star that year. Had a 1.74 ERA and a 2.37 ERA plus. And that year, I remember he was hit with he was using sunscreen and rosin. And I really, at that time I was like, oh, he was putting some stuff on his hands, whatever. And then later that year, that was the Michael Pineda situation where he had this.
I was at that game.
Were you at that game? Really?
I was at that game. I was sitting in the outfield bleachers, and I remember they walked out to the mound, and everyone in the stadium was like, what's going on? This is kind of weird. Everyone kind of thought it might be like an injury thing, but then like we saw like the umpire like stare at his neck, and we're like, that's odd. And then I'm like,
he wasn't even trying.
Yeah, I was like, also, who puts that on their neck? Like
He was like, well, I'm dark skinned, I can hide it. I was like, all right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Who wants to pitch with that on their neck? That's just insane. I believe he might have had a tattoo there too, which made it a little bit darker.
Yeah, it was tough. Like those are the only 2 times I like. Obviously, it's happened more than that, but those are the 2 times where I remember like, oh, and that was 7-8 years ago that both of those incidents occurred. So now again, and I think it's hard for someone who's not like a super fan of the game to be like, well, it's against the rules, right?
Yep.
And yeah, it is against the rules, but when you're told that you're not going to enforce that rule, is it really a rule? And that's what you're about saying.
Sorry, Cody, but
No.
I kind of see a comparison with like the steroid use in this, because like they didn't crack down on steroids for a long time, and they started cracking down on it, and they got A-Rod and Bonds and Clemens and Manny and possibly Ortiz, not sure about that one, but like they got all those big names or whatnot, but like, and now like they're leaving, especially Bonds and Clemens, like out of the Hall of Fame when like they neglected their own rules, and so but they're making the players pay for it. So I'm wondering like, what is the future of this hold? So like, let's say hypothetically, I'm not trying to accuse anyone doing it. Let's say like a surefire Hall of Famer. Okay, like name a pitcher, like surefire right now, like Clayton Kershaw. Can we both agree on that?
Kershaw, Justin Verlander, Zach Greinke.
Okay. All right. So Kershaw. Let's say Kershaw. Let's say Kershaw. He's a surefire first ballot Hall of Famer, no question. Let's say he gets caught using expired attack or whatever this year. Are they gonna keep him out of the Hall because he cheated? And then it's like, then where's the balance of power here? Because like you're keeping Clemens and Bonds out for using a performance enhancer. So now are you going to keep out the Kershaws, the Glasnows, the Coles potentially in the future because they enhance their performance too?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a question to ask, and I mean we'll see when it gets there. I mean, again, I personally don't see an issue with if the Major League Baseball just comes up with something, and the thing is like hitters are allowed to use so much sticky stuff, pine tar, the batting gloves are sticky, they have that spray, they have the stick, they have like 17 different things so the bat stays in their hand. So it's also just not fair. I mean, if you're giving one guy 30 things you can use and you're giving one guy 2 and it doesn't even work half the time, like that's just not fair regardless of like context of its sport. Like that's the issue there, and that it's just not being fair. It's not being consistent. And if they can just come down if they say that sunscreen and rosin's fine, then I think you're fine there. Where pitchers have that grip, it doesn't influence spin rate nearly as much as a spider tack would. Eliminate the stuff that's super jumping that spin rate, and you're fine. You're set. And I think that's how if they can just over the off season, because unfortunately I think this is going to last through the season, which is going to suck. For the pitchers, I feel bad for them. I again, the casual people like, how can you feel bad for a cheater? It's way more complicated than that, like Pat said coming into the segment.
Yep.
But if you can agree on what substance is okay for me to use and what is not, and then you can use your dictation rules and whatever, then I think that's fine. And I think if you allow them to use their rosin and sunscreen, which seems to be the most popular one, I think in the extreme circumstances, that's where the spider tack is coming from. But I from what I'm hearing and seeing, I think just the majority of people are just using sunscreen and rosin.
My thing is that, so you said like, make the list of what is and isn't allowed and give them what they want to use. I see from the leaks that like, we said you can use rosin. We give you a rosin bag every time you're out there. So I'm saying like they gave the pitchers an option. They gave them something. I understand it's not as extensive as the hitters list, but like, I don't know. That's the tough part because like the league gave them something to use. The league did help them on this, and so it's like, I understand. You want let's say you expand the list to like rosin and sunscreen, or like what you want to use, whatever else. People are still gonna find ways around the rule.
Oh yeah,
Point blank. Period. So like I feel like this is kind of a moot discussion because like the MLB is clearly the most negligent league ever. NHL is very close. So you can definitely debate. That could be next week's debate on who's stupider. But like, if you go to the NFL is very clear cut. Like You cannot use this, or this. We will let you use these. And but they crack down on it hard. The MLB doesn't. Their crackdown is letting people. It's you're not even taking money out of their pockets. My idea, it'll never happen, but what they should do, in my opinion, suspend the players, take all their pay, take that pool of money, and give it to all the minor leaguers that you are currently starving
Yeah.
cheating out of the system.
Yeah, let's not get into that bag of worms. We'll be here for hours.
Oh, yeah. Just in case anyone doesn't know, Major League Baseball, for some minor league players, they're getting paid $900 for 2 weeks. $900 every 2 weeks, and they don't even pay for loan housing. So most minor leaguers are currently living out of their car for 2 weeks, barely getting by, and so they're making no money. And MLB is basically exploiting them for having a dream. So we will. I'm sure Cody and I, we will get into this at some point. Let's not do it today, just for the sake of time and conversation. I think this could be a next week topic. But yeah, that's basically where baseball is at. Baseball is a horrible league. But
so I think
I digress.
If I were to pick, I think my side of the debate is MLB botched this and botched this pretty hard, and that's my take.
The thing, it's hard to say if they botched it. I think the only thing that really botched here is that they didn't crack down on cheating and stuff earlier. That's my only thing. When it comes to whatever else, I don't even know what. We've talked about so much of this. How do you not crack down on cheating before? You let steroids go, and then you say, "Oh wait, we shouldn't have done that. That's bad." And now you see pitchers doing this for so long. You give the Houston Astros a World Series, you did nothing. The Red Sox cheated with Apple Watches, you did nothing. What is happening? You can't expect people to follow rules. I would love to say, yeah, everyone's following the rules. Fair league. Of course it's not. No league is fair.
No.
So I don't understand. How do you not crack down on this stuff?
Yeah,
but that's my only grievance.
Yeah.
For the players, I'm actually okay with the players doing it. Find the loopholes. Make your game better. I get why you're doing it. The league is just so incompetent.
That's it. So,
but moving on
to our final topic of the night and our historical debate of the night, and we have come up with: you are a major league team that's actually competent, and you're not cheating, and you're in the World Series. You're Game 7, and you have.
We are assuming that no player is using anything illegal. So the pitchers are using rosin only.
Only rosin for these pitchers. Which pitcher are you taking in the history of the league for a Game 7 of the World Series, and why is it Pedro Martinez? Pat, I'll let you go first.
I'm not gonna lie. When we talked about this question earlier, the first person I thought to was Pedro. I was all right, Pedro's the obvious answer. And I was wondering, I'm Cody's definitely gonna say Pedro. There's no way Cody doesn't say Pedro.
I love Pedro too much.
Oh, I know. He's the one player I wish I was alive for. Over Jordan.
I have called my mother. I have called my mother, who she had me when she was young. I have called her selfish for not getting pregnant 9 years old, so I could miss Pedro. I was born in '99, so I missed the 2 greatest pitching seasons of all time by just the fact that he was being a selfish.
So Cody and I, we assumed Alex was gonna be here, but Alex had something going on, couldn't be here. All good, but so I went a little off the board, assuming that you were gonna take Pedro and then Alex would take Sandy Koufax or whoever else. I was actually between 3 guys. I was between Pedro, Max Scherzer, and Justin Verlander. More recent picks, but I think they get a little bit more forgotten about. I chose Justin Verlander.
Yeah, really? Okay.
I think the guy is just nails. As a Red Sox fan, I saw him on those Houston teams. I know they cheated, but not on the pitching side they didn't. So I saw him dominate on those Houston teams on the back, not even back 9, the back 3 of his career. And then all those years, he tortured us in Detroit. I know we got our ring and we beat them in 2013 and whatnot, but he was just a thorn in our side for years. And he's 14-11 in his playoffs. I understand, but wins and losses are not the biggest stat in my opinion. He has a 3.4 ERA. He has 187 innings pitched. And so in his 31 starts, he's averaging 6 innings. So that means most of his games, he's going 6 innings plus, probably, most likely. He's been in 19 playoff series and has been in 6 World Series. And like he was the face of those Tigers and Astros pitching staffs. And both of them were very good pitching staffs. People forget that Tigers team had Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, Rick Porcello, and Anibal Sanchez as like their big 4. That's a nasty top 4 to have. And he was by far the face of it for a long time. But I'll give it back to you, Cody.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised you didn't even mention Bob Gibson. It would have been my number 2. And for my money, those are the Pedro Martinez and Bob Gibson are the first and second best pitchers in Major League history.
I'm not as big of a historian as you are, so like I keep mine a little bit more recent. Like I don't have like the names from way back, you know. Because like I was thinking like, oh, Sandy Koufax or like Randy Johnson or like those guys. I honestly, Bob Gibson did not even pop up in my head.
Yeah, Bob Gibson would be obviously one of my choices. You know what's a fun choice to do? John Lester would be an actual sneaky pick.
Until someone gets on first.
Yeah, and then, but you know, he's technically like one of the best of all
He
time.
Is nails.
Playoff performances, but my money is going to reside with Pedro Martinez. And if we look at his playoff numbers, they actually a little bit surprising. We're actually a little worse than what I thought was going to be. In his, he is pitched in 16 world postseason games. He has started 14 of them. He has a 3.46 ERA, a 6-4 record, and he is still great. I mean, if we look at some of his best performances in his first playoff series, he won against Cleveland. He went 7 innings, 3 earned runs, and Cleveland at that time was absolutely insane. The next year, he had 10 innings pitched in that game and in that series. He started 1 game. He came in, he pitched, I think was it game 4. And then in the deciding game 5, he went back and the next day and pitched 6 no-hit innings or 5 no-hit innings. It was absolutely incredible. Yeah. And that was one of the best playoff performances of all time. He had an 11.7 championship win probability added, which is absolutely absurd. He was absolutely fantastic. And then in the ALCS against the Yankees, he pitched 1 game in that series, 7 innings pitched, no earned runs, 12 strikeouts. But then it came to the Yankees Are My Daddy series, where in 2003 was 0-1 in 2 games, 14 innings, 16 hits, 9 earned runs, did not pitch well.
See, that's why I didn't pick Pedro. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to cut you off. This is the 3rd time, but it's so sad. Pedro, for my money, I think he's the best pitcher that ever lived. In my opinion. I think that's a popular opinion, not even like a Boston opinion. But that's probably the reason why I didn't go with Pedro, because the one playoff memory that I have of Pedro Martinez is Who's Your Daddy? That's like the most iconic Pedro playoff moment. Pedro is nails. He was fantastic. Like, the 2 most iconic things with Pedro is when he struck out the side in the All-Star game and Who's Your Daddy? And unfortunately, that was like, ooh, how actually good is he in the playoffs? He's nails. He's amazing. But like that one moment, I was just like, ooh, And I'm sure Justin Verlander is nowhere near Pedro. I got it. But like, it was just that one moment. I was like, oh, it's hard to pick.
Yeah, and then those 2 series right there in 03 and 04, even 04 when they won, he still had a 6.23 ERA against the Yankees. We don't have to add on there how good Pedro was. Those are 2 of the best offensive teams of all time. But then in the World Series, his 1 start, he went 7 innings and didn't get up a run and struck out 6. So you just have his regular season resume, which is as good, if not better. At least had the best one. He had the best peak as a pitcher. I mean, he had 2 of the 2 greatest seasons back to back from 2000, basically from like 2005 on to like 97, 2005. He was the best pitcher in the league. Here are his ERAs from 97 to 2005. 1.9, 2.89, 2.7, 1.7, or 2.07, excuse me. 1.7, 2.4, 2.2, 2.2, 3.9, 2.8. He had an ERA plus from 1997, 219, 163, 243, 291, which is the highest ERA plus of all time, I believe. 188, 202, 211, 124, 146. He's just absolutely ridiculous prime, and I'm taking prime Pedro Martinez to save my life in Game 7. All day, every day. And if he gets...
I just want to toss out quickly. In a pitcher's duel, modern day, you have peak Pedro and peak Jacob deGrom. First off, how many runs do you think are scored in that game? I got probably one.
I think they each go 13 innings, and just the other team hasn't scored yet.
Yeah, it's like, how, honestly, is modern day deGrom, like right now, I know his heart, is he better than Pedro? I know you love Pedro. I know. And I would say Pedro just because of the longevity, but like deGrom's ERA is 0.5.
Oh my God, it's so like I love Jacob deGrom. I think he's absolutely ridiculous. And honestly, like I would be fine saying that he's the second best player in baseball right now. And just his thing,
I think he's the best. No, never mind. No, I'll take that back. Since
2018, he's had ERAs of 1.7, 2.4, 2.4, 0.5. His ERA pluses are 218, 171, 182. Pat, I want you to guess what's his ERA plus this year.
No, I'm kidding. What is ERA plus? Like, what does it measure?
So it's basically like if all pitchers pitch in a vacuum, and they attribute a number to like how good. So if 100 is average, so in 2018 we had a 218 ERA plus. He's technically 200% better than the average pitcher.
Jesus Christ.
So 293, which is Pedro's, or 291, which is Pedro's 2000 season, I think is the most all-time in a single season. What is deGrom's this year? Through 11 games.
275?
It is 719.
That is absurd.
So
he struck out 8 guys and 9 batters. 3 innings. He struck out 8 of them.
He is in a vacuum 700% better than the average average pitcher in Major League history.
That is insane.
It is ridiculous. And if he has 2 or 3 more years like that and has a 97 to 2005 stretch like Pedro did and like Kershaw did and like Bob Gibson did and all the greats, like he's going to be in that conversation. I think he's a Hall of Famer.
The fact that we're not going to see him like peak deGrom, most likely, unless big things happen. The fact that we're not going to see peak deGrom in the playoffs is so sad. Like, that's the guy you want to see. Game 7, you roll him up. Like, imagine, it would shatter my heart to see it. Imagine you've got Garrett Cole versus Jacob deGrom in a Game 7.
Yeah, I mean, in his in 2015 when they had the World Series against the Dodgers, he was 2-0, a 1.38 ERA, 20 strikeouts in 13 innings, only 2 earned runs through 2 games.
He's better.
Against the Cubs, he went 7 innings, 2 earned runs, 7 strikeouts, gave up 2 solo shots. That was it. And then he got touched up a little bit against the Royals in a loss in the World Series. He had 5 innings, gave up 4 earned.
The thing is, but he's so much better than what he was then. Those numbers are disgusting, and he's probably improved 10 times since then, which is just a disgusting thought. And also, I know we've been a little NBA heavy and MLB heavy, but the all rookie teams for the NBA just came out like a couple minutes ago. So breaking news. So first team, we have LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards, Therese Halliburton, Sadiq Bey, and Jayshawn Tate.
Sure.
I don't know who Jayshawn Tate is, so I'm going to disagree with that one.
He was good.
Second team, Emmanuel Quickley, Desmond Bain, Isaac Okoro, Isaiah Stewart, and Patrick Williams. I would have moved quickly up to first team and taken Jayshawn Tate down just because I don't know him, but that's my only pick.
Yeah, I think that's just a position.
Yeah, that's fine though.
You have 3 guards ahead of him, which I
Yeah.
agree. But yeah, so that's I think going to do it. Unless you have any other points.
No, I think that's it. I mean, I know to anyone who's still listening now, thank you. Like we
Yes,
really
an
appreciate
hour
it.
in.
Really, yeah. I know it was a lot of baseball today, a lot of basketball today. We will switch it up next week. I promise. We will incorporate something else. I know Monday we will be recording the Chris Paul debate when it's just the 3 of us, hopefully. So stay tuned for that one. That's probably gonna be the best thing that we do yet. So, and I will make sure we incorporate some football or some hockey because by that time, hockey playoffs, this 3rd round will be really going. So, to anyone else, thank you just for listening to this point. And we got more stuff coming. So, we will be back with a new episode on Tuesday.
Yeah, definitely. So make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening to, watching this from. Make sure to tell your friends about it. We have a Twitter page now. If you are on Twitter, and I believe it is, let me just get the correct @ just to make sure 100%. It is at Hustle Sports Pod. So if you listen, we're gonna post some polls down there, which is basically our debate questions. We already have one up right now about the Tennessee Titans from the last podcast, which has 7 votes right now, which would be cool. So that's fun, having 7 votes. We only have 4 followers, so make sure you jump on that and help us grow a little bit, and we'll be pushing that. But from Pat, myself, and Alex, who is killing it in his beer league softball match right now, we thank you guys so much. Again, thank you for listening to this point. Make sure to share, subscribe wherever you're listening to, watching this from, and we will see you next time with the Hustle Sports Debate Podcast.